What's that? Sorry, Walt.
Ready to go?
I think we are.
Okay.
Hey.
Okay, call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Chair Glines.
Present?
Committee members Wolf, Hintermeister,
Here.
Hutchison. Here. Lovelace.
Here.
Oliver.
Here.
Edgerton.
Here.
Brown.
Okay, first item on the agenda is a report of the chair. I would just like to say a couple of things. Ed, are you going to be talking later on about new member recruitment?
Yes.
Thank you. And I missed the meeting of January 18, so I don't have a report from that. And I'm sure if anything happened of any great magnitude, Ed will fill us in. And not that I'm proud to have missed the meeting, but I'm proud to say that was the first meeting in 4 years I've missed.
It was noticed because they waited for you, because they brought the item back up. Supervisor Wasserman was concerned. Walt, okay, well, let's wait. And then they came back and said, well, Walt's still not here. So.
I should have said something, but it's coming back from San Jose if I'm going to be on the road after 2:30 in the afternoon. I'm on going by Chesbro, and it's not to check out the project we have there. It's to miss the traffic, and there's little reception up there.
It happens to the best of us. So.
Thank you, thank you. And one other question is, are you going to be talking about the Pacheco Dam Reservoir and that it didn't make the state's list?
Oh, I didn't know about that. So if you want to do it during...
Oh, I was going to do it just right now.
Yeah, I think that's perfect, yeah.
It's being appealed, but it did not make the state's list because it did not have enough public benefit. And so we could definitely use the water, especially as what's happening now, but that's a new, I don't know if it's a state law or a new regulation, but public benefit really is a major factor in anything that has to do with the expenditure of the water bonds. And that's my report. And other people, Craig, if we could start from my left, and if you have anything to say.
Nothing.
Okay, Dick?
I have nothing to report.
Oh, we're great, all right. And then any public items, comment on items not on the agenda? Doug, do we have you now or later? Thank you, thank you. Okay, if I could have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the November 2 regular meeting of the Public Advisory Committee.
I so move.
Thank you. All those approved?
Well, just
All right. And
time out.
All right.
I just had really small correction.
Okay.
So let's see, I believe, so on page 7, there's a really minor typo, 501c3 update between the last word time frame. There's a little space between the T and the I. I wasn't here for the last meeting, so sorry. I was kind of curious. Did you catch that? Mm-hmm. Okay, great, thanks. I just wanted to say, Edmund, impressed over the aquatic resource plan being integrated. So that's, yeah, no, good stuff. And also meeting with Noah, also really good stuff. I just wanted to comment on that. Thought that was quite excellent. I missed all that. And the only other question I had, I'm sorry, folks, I missed last meeting. It says this is under financial management update, audit services. It says the RFP was written and is being advertised in concert with the Silicon Valley Regional Interoperability Authority. Why?
They were having some concerns about the auditor who worked on, so when we were kind of commingled with the county, and the county was sort of serving as our banker, the county is still their banker, but neither one of us were satisfied with the audit services we got. So we just did an RFP with them.
You just
so-
buddied up?
Yeah,
It
buddied
wasn't-
up.
There was no,
No.
otherwise, it was just
No,
the
and they-
reason that both of you just happened to
yeah.
talk and were unhappy?
Exactly, and they
Okay.
ended up choosing another, what I thought was we were gonna choose the same auditor, but it ended up they chose somebody else, and then we went with the one we went with, so.
Okay, all right.
And we typically change it every 3 years with the audit. I know that we did it I mean, we switched over at Gavilan, and each auditing company has a different way of looking at it. And so it's a learning experience for staff, the board, and the auditors. And so it's a learning experience. And not that anyone's doing anything wrong, but there's just different interpretations on what you're supposed to do how.
Yeah, I found that I'm satisfied with the way the new company did it, and yeah, it was completely different than the way Vargas did it.
Right.
Yeah.
I have one small other typo, or either that or I can't parse this sentence right. It's at the end of page 7, the high-speed rail. It says coordinated high-speed rail comments with SEC planning presented to, and then like, oh, you just lost me. I just couldn't follow that sentence, so please.
Yeah, I did not review the minutes, I apologize for that. But I think it's supposed to be the Santa Clara County Planning is probably what it is. It's probably supposed to be capital S, capital C, capital C. Yeah, yep, sure.
So with the corrections, can everyone still approves?
Yes.
Thank you. And we have one abstention.
I need to abstain also. I was in.
Okay.
Does that cause us a problem with our approval?
No, we've got now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 5 is a quorum. Okay. And Kyle, welcome, and you're now at the meeting.
Yes,
So the motion passes, and so we're going on to item number 2, Pacheco Creek Reserve Restoration Update.
And Jerry Haas is going to give you a short presentation on
Thank
that
you.
project.
Who filled in admirably for you last time.
Oh, I wouldn't use the adjective admirably, but thank you very much. Thank you. Let me get this to open up on the full screen there. Nice to see you all tonight. Feels like a spring night, but it's not spring. It's February 1st. Nice and warm out here. So this is a presentation on a project we have going on right now, a restoration on one of our reserve system properties. This is our second acquisition or second enrollment into the reserve system, Pacheco Creek Reserve. As the name implies, right along Pacheco Creek. It's on the south side of 152, and it's just outside of, well, it's about 15 miles east of Gilroy, just past Costa Fuda, about 3 miles past Costa Fuda, on the south side of the highway there. This was a former Caltrans mitigation site. They had a failed restoration effort out there, and so we picked up the property in order to kind of complete the restoration and also to get land enrolled into our system. So we immediately embarked on a restoration project of our own. This is a restoration focus to enhance the on-site habitat. So we acquired the property, we acquired it in the summer last year, June last year. Signed a contract with Point Blue Conservation Science in November to do a restoration of some of the upland oak woodland and also riparian habitat on the property. They have, Point Blue has a program, students and teachers restoring a watershed, and so they use area youth, kids that are kind of interested in ecology or want to learn about ecology or just want a day off school to go out and do some plantings on the property. It's community-based, educational, and it's interactive. And I'll talk a little bit more about straw in just a second, but I'll get you acquainted with the site here. Looks like it scrolls the other way. So you can see the Pacheco Creek Reserve is on Pacheco Creek, southeast portion of the plan area. These are the properties. It's 55 acres in total. It comprises 3 different parcels on the site. Pacheco Creek runs I guess you'd say kind of northeast to southwest through the property there, and then it goes underneath a bridge on 152. These are the planting sites. So the restoration effort is focused on the areas that didn't get completely wiped out with last winter's floods. You can see this kind of, I don't know if the cursor works here, but the floods sort of washed out this entire area down here. But these upland areas are in still pretty good shape. This upland area is in good shape. The riparian banks along here are the area that we were kind of concerned about for stabilization. So those are the 3 planting areas of focus. We started doing some of the plantings in December. I think we had 2 planting dates out there in December. And this is what the weather looked like in December out there before they got started. So what they do is go out there first, and you'll see different colored flags there. Those would represent the different types of shrubs that are going to be planted in that site. They also planted acorns that are put in little cages there to protect them when they're growing. So it'd be a combination of trees and shrubs in the upland, and then willow and other shrubs along the banks there. So the conservation scientists will come out there first, and they'll map it all out. And then the school bus shows up, and the kids come out. They get in a big circle, and they're kind of given their tools and given their instructions, and they're all very eager to get out there and start doing something. So they break them up into groups of 4. Instructors will go around and kind of make sure they're planting these things properly. But they just have a heck of a time out there, digging and raking and, and getting the plants in the ground. So it's a nice effort to see out there. The straw program focuses on local area and middle schools. They like to kind of pull kids from the local area so they have something kind of vested in the community here. They're all in the vicinity of the project site. For this project, we'll have 12 different planting dates, about half of which have occurred already, and they'll continue doing the plantings up until, through April, about through April. About 30 to 80 students each day. You can imagine the din of noise with 30 to 80 students out there, maybe keeping the wildlife away for a little bit, but they get a lot of work done. They get a lot of plants in the ground. And through the whole program, we'll expect to see about 500 to 600 students coming through the site. So it's a good exposure for that many kids.
Where are the schools?
These schools are all in the vicinity, so they're going to be Gilroy, so R.O. Hardin, and I didn't bring a list of the schools with me.
Gilroy.
Gilroy, yeah. So they're all going to be just from a localized area. Point Blue will...
Hollister also.
Yeah, I was going to say Hardin
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
San Benito County.
Okay. So initially, Point Blue will go out to the schools. They'll have a day of instruction in the classrooms and let the kids know what a watershed is and why a watershed is important, why restoring a watershed is important. Those who are excited enough and want to go, they'll arrange a day for them to be bussed out to the site. They got to come out there and plant all morning, have lunch, and plant a little bit more, and then head back afterwards. So it's a really nice program. Plantings continue this month, and this is sort of the upland area along the bank here, sort of on the north end of the site there. So there was another grouping there. These would be trees that are going to be going in here, some oaks. And then the bank here that we were concerned about stabilizing, these would be willows and shrubs along the top of the bank to just sort of keep it intact. I don't know that we're going to see rains like we did last year or this year. So this is an opportunity to get some willows in the ground to see if they kind of stabilize that bank before the next big event comes along. And that's the last bit of group there. So that's what they're doing out there now. We'll be out there for another couple of months. We have specific planting dates lined up. If any of you want to drive by there, feel free to reach out to me. I'll let you know which dates they're going to be out there. But it's a lot of fun to see them.
Or if you want to volunteer too,
Yeah, we'll take volunteers.
supervise the kids.
Any questions?
No, thank you.
No?
I said no.
So just a couple of things. I think, it's really great. You're working with an organization that, uses the volunteers, gets the kids involved. I also wanted to just point out that I was pleased to see that you are trying to engage the neighboring property owners. I think that's really good use of resources without having to, you don't have to pay anybody. So good stuff. And then the other question I had was, time and again, I think, you have the contract here, right? Or I am on the next one.
Yeah, that's the number 4.
Yeah, okay, sorry. So those were really my only 2 comments on that. I thought that was, I really appreciated seeing that.
Good. Yeah, the neighbors have been very receptive to us out there. One neighbor has a well on the property, and they've got an access easement across the property to get to the well. It's their only source of water on the other side of the highway there. So they're very eager to work with us and be cooperative. The other neighbors, great neighbors on the other side too. So yeah, no complaints at all. Things are going pretty well out there.
One last question. Before the kids came out, was there a need to take away invasives or deal with the property itself to sort of prep it?
No, not too much of an invasives problem out there yet. Well, I shouldn't say yet. That's kind of cursing it in some way. The property's in pretty good shape. It just needs a little bit more planting. It needs a little bit more native introduction. But no, there's some limited invasive species out there.
Thistles.
Thistles primarily.
Fennel, poison hemlock. Yeah. The main ones, yeah.
Just to kind of echo Julie's stuff, I mean, it's a great program, win-win with the neighbors, the kids, the school. And I was going to suggest before the next planting, KSBW TV in Salinas. They might well bite. And the same thing with the freelance newspaper over in Hollister, the Dispatch here, Morgan Hill Life, and I can, if you want, I can, give you contacts and phone numbers, because that whenever we can get our message out to the public, because I can't imagine very many people even know that there's a habitat agency here.
Right.
True. Yeah, we're kind of under the radar.
Yeah, we've talked about putting a sign up on the property to let people know that it's.
That would be a good idea.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it's pretty visible from the highway there. One of the schools is bringing out a film crew. That may have occurred on Friday, I think. It might have occurred on Friday. Had a film crew out there, so I said, please send along a video if you get one of the kids out there. But sure, I think it's a great, any leads you have for me, I'm happy to follow up on them.
Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah, we're pretty interested in getting more known. Once the neighbors understood that we were an agency, but not an agency that was a threat, they were much more comfortable working with us, so.
Yeah, and it's those kind of people who will talk to their friends and their neighbors, and then all of a sudden, it's just better for, the cause as we move
Yeah.
forward.
It can lead to more land acquisitions. It can lead to future conservation easements. There's just all sorts of great benefits that come from networking out there.
Right, and we can get as we get the endowment going, we can ask people to include us in their will.
Yeah. Oh, I like that.
No, I mean, we've done that in the Morgan Hill
Yes.
Rotary,
Yes.
and you never know where it's gonna come from.
I have a friend who's a director of Creek Conservancy in the Central Valley, and some guy who passed away gave him $700,000.
Oh.
And it came out of the blue. I mean, the guy was always supportive of the Conservancy, and yeah, so yes, I take what you say seriously, yes.
All right, Craig, you had something?
Is there any chance the high-speed rail is going to impact this property?
It's going to go
It's
one of the alignments.
the alignment goes near it. It's more on the back side, and we've talked to the Burdettes about it, and some of our other neighbors. I need to give them all an update on what's going on there, because I know more than they probably do. But the alignment, it's hard to say where it's going to go, but from maps I've seen, it goes to the south of this area where the kids are doing the restoration work.
South, you mean on the other side of the road?
The other side of the creek.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So on this
Yeah.
side of the creek.
So you're not just spinning your
Kind of
wheels by
into the
doing all this?
embankment. I mean, it kind of comes in at an angle, so it may clip the property. I don't know.
Okay. I just have concern you got all this effort and then light
Yeah.
rail comes in, plows it all up and builds a,
They'll have to
I mean,
mitigate.
high-speed
They'll
rail.
have to mitigate for it. They'll have to reimburse us. Yeah.
oh, they put a ton of money into it if that's the deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is an observation, the Caltrans used to have a provision to adopt a highway. You come to companies and they buy this little placard, they
Right.
set along the highway. Would they let us do that for, you say,
I'll check with
It's
them.
worth looking into.
highway restoration
Yes.
done by the HCP or?
It,
See those all over other parts of California. I haven't seen them in that area.
We've had them on 101 in the past.
Oh, you're right, right. Maybe 152 is too dangerous. They don't want people out there. I've been picking up trash intermittently out in front of the property, keeping it look nice, so. No, that's a great idea, though, because that's free advertising if the signs can be put up there. I'll check with them on that program.
and this is kind of phase one. Part of it was when Caltrans donated the property to us, one of the conditions was of the donation that we would implement their oak restoration mitigation. That was a requirement of their 1986 mitigation agreement with the Fish and Wildlife Service to plant oaks out there. So they gave us money to do that, and this is part of what we were doing. And we feel we put them in a better place than Caltrans put them. They got washed out twice. So they did.
Caltrans had plantings really in the area where the last storm blew out the creek and jumped the creek, so, and that's why we're focusing.
Yeah,
on
we're
these other
focusing more in the upland areas. So, and then part of it is for us, for the credit needs of this agency, and that's primarily the riparian stuff. So this is sort of like phase one. Phase two, if we ever do anything out there, because this is a very dynamic creek, hydrologically speaking. It's I went out in the property during the drought. I was out there the last year of the drought, and I was out there a couple years before that, going through the donation agreement process with Caltrans and getting familiar with the site. And when I went out this past spring, I didn't recognize the property. It was so altered by the creek flows, a wet year. But I'm guessing they were probably 20, 25-year events. We didn't have any 100-year events. There was a lot of 10 to 25-year events, one after the other. But the creek had been completely changed, and a lot of riparian vegetation had disappeared, and it appeared in new places. And point bars were created, sandbars. It's a very, very dynamic system. So if we end up doing anything in the creek, and one of the target species would be steelhead, there's a lot we need to learn about. Is this a good spot to try to do it? Because of what Jerry said, came in and just boom. And I was shocked. I didn't recognize the property from one year to the next. I go, wow, what happened here? There had been a fire out there. Cal Fire had put some fire breaks in and some berms, and everything got wiped out. So. But it looks better now, in my opinion. It looks more like it probably should have pre-fire. Yeah.
Is this the creek that flooded the Lover's Lane area and
Yes,
displaced
probably.
a number of people?
Yeah, it was, because Lover's Lane is just upstream, yeah, or Lover's Leap, whatever it's called, yeah.
Yeah, because the levee was breached twice because of the rainfall.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Sure, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I do have a speaker card for this item.
Oh, okay. If we would, we have some comments from the audience?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, committee members and staff. For the record, my name is Doug Muirhead. I live in Morgan Hill. My question is about the source of the plant materials, and maybe you've covered this in a previous presentation and I've forgotten about it. But having just come from recently from a review by the Water District of some of their mitigation projects where they have a couple of small nurseries that are guaranteed to be free of this plant pathogen whose name I can't pronounce, but perhaps, thank you. I was sure there were people in this room that could do that. I'm curious if you've established standards for best practices for nurseries, if you're obtaining plants that way, or perhaps these willows and acorns are just gathered off the ground locally and you don't have that concern. But I would like, if you wouldn't mind, a little bit of an explanation about where these materials are coming from and do you have concerns about the health of any of the sources of those? Thank you.
So the nursery sources are Phytophthora free, which is not easy to say. The bulk of the plantings, especially the willow, the acorns, those are all coming from on site. So they're taken from plants that are already there that we know are okay. Phytophthora is something that we're increasingly aware of. We make sure, in fact, when the kids come out there to do the work each day, their shoes are all sprayed with the solution. They're scrubbed off. The school buses stay on the road. They don't come off to the side of the dirt road there. So we're keenly aware of it. Point Blue has been aware of this for a while. They're kind of one of the leading research groups into Phytophthora and how to fight it in the area. So yeah, thank you for bringing it up. It's a concern that we're aware of with all of our restoration projects.
Thank you. Okay, and so we'll go to the next item on the agenda, the Friends of the Family Habitat Agency formation update.
Yes, just want to give you a little update on this. So the state of California formally recognized the Friends of Santa Clara ValleyHabitat Agency in May of last year when it filed its articles of incorporation for the group, and corporation ID number was assigned to us. It also obtained an employer identification number from the IRS in July of last year. The board of directors of the Friends held its first meeting July 26th, 2017. Myself, Julie, and Christina Turner from the city of Morgan Hill are all on the board. So at that time, we determined staggered 3-year terms, adopted bylaws, and conducted other entity startup business. The bylaws established a board of between 3 and 5 members, and both Julie and Christina encouraged us to expand the board to 5 members, so letting that be known to you if there's any interest. They had their second meeting in September, and at that meeting, to learn a little bit more about the Silicon Valley Community Foundation, and sort of Bob Spencer, who is our consultant who helped us with determining how to invest the endowment and some of the thought process that he went through. And they also adopted a conflict of interest policy. So the real good news is that the Internal Revenue Service recognized us as a 501c3 in December of last year and made it effective to May of last year when the state did it. In addition to be eligible to receive donations, the Friends group is also qualified to receive tax-deductible bequests, as we talked about a little earlier, devices, transfers, and gifts upon provisions of the tax code. So future actions is, now that we have the federal tax exempt, we're seeking the state, and the paperwork was filed on that. And as noted in the report, the governing board decided that we invest our funds with the Silicon Valley Community Foundation, our endowment funds, and that happened in 2016 and in September. So after the group officially becomes tax exempt, a Foundation and Friends meeting will be held so the Foundation can explain its operations and anticipated interactions with the Friends board. So the main reason why we're doing this is for the endowment investment, and that's a requirement if we want to have maximum flexibility. The Community Foundation, to have that maximum flexibility, you have to be a 501c3. If not, they get to keep the principal forever. We couldn't ever take it out. And so if we had a dispute with them, the money would be locked in. So by creating the 501c3, it gave us the most flexibility that they offer. And it gave us a choice of some additional funds that they manage. And that's all I have to say on that issue.
Thank you. Any comments, questions? Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 4, Calero County Park Pond and Wetland Restoration.
Yeah, and this was more it should have been worded a little differently in the agenda, but it's more just to give you an update on where we are with this project. So I'm just going to quickly talk about some things related to the project, and what we're going to be doing in the future is reporting to you on the success and monitoring data and the management activities associated with this restoration. And I want to get in the habit of doing that as more and more of these restoration projects get completed, that we share success criteria with you. We explain adaptive management or management challenges, and I think it's important that you understand what these things are, and you may have some suggestions or ideas on some of the challenges associated with managing some of these projects. So the Habitat Agency is required to manage and monitor the Clara Park wetland restoration, pond and wetland restoration project. So we created a habitat mitigation and monitoring plan, something that's called an MMP. This project resulted in the restoration and creation of 0.16 acres of coastal valley freshwater marsh, 0.24 acres of seasonal wetland, and 0.22 acres of pond to benefit California tiger salamander, also known as CTS, the red-legged frog, and the western pond turtle, as well as the Mount Hamilton thistle. Management and monitoring will ensure the project meets the success criteria that is identified in the MMP. So what's currently out there is breeding CTS, there are breeding turtles, and there is Mount Hamilton thistle. The turtle and the thistle and the CTS are found at the pond. Only the CTS is found at the wetland. Over at the pond site, over 400 CTS were relocated last September when the pond was drained for predator control. And this is a different sort of invasive species. We talked about plants before, but this is bullfrogs and crayfish, which will eat the tadpoles and the young frogs. They'll also eat the CTS. The one species we don't have out there yet is the red-legged frog, but we'll keep our fingers crossed and see what happens. So the western pond turtle, as I mentioned, is also breeding in the pond site, and 5 turtles were seen, including some young turtles, were seen out there when the dewatering activity happened. So the bullfrogs need year-round water. So if you dewater the pond, that's the best way to try to eliminate the bullfrog population. We also created a lot of grazing infrastructure out there for the grazer, and grazing is really important for that site because there's a lot of the rare plants and the serpentine habitat. So
Ed, could I interrupt for a
Yes,
moment?
certainly.
This is just a really stupid sounding question, but here I go. Do the bullfrog, you drain the pond, but what do you do with the bullfrog? Or do they just, happily hop away and find another
No,
home?
they're, and yeah, crawfish boil, and, we should have a party, And the bullfrogs meet an unceremonial end.
And the bullfrog.
Animal
egg
lovers would
masses-
not like what we do to bullfrogs, so. I think with the crawfish we could. The bullfrog, I guess they brought bullfrogs here for the frog legs, so yeah, we could do a pig roast, and
Maybe.
maybe, yeah. So, so the project scope for this is long-term monitoring. So they already did 1 year of monitoring, so this contract was for an additional 2 years. And then there'll be additional maintenance monitoring for another 2 to 3 years. But we'll be monitoring the site periodically forever. So we will report back to the PAC on the monitoring effort and overall success of the project next February. Yes.
the CTS that were out there, the 400 CTS, we started with about 4 in that pond, but because the season was so long and we got so much rain in that first year, the pond was completed in October. The rains came right away. And so it was a long season. There were 2 breeding cycles, so that 4 turned into about 400.
And yeah, for a second breeding cycle, so we aren't quite sure how many were in the first breeding cycle.
Yeah, but it was an immense success
Yeah.
for a first effort.
And there were no CTS in the wetland, and now they're there too. So it's good. These are the kind of things that we'd all hoped for. So.
Maybe you should build another pond now.
We're ready to. Coyote Ridge,
Much more.
we're building a couple ponds up there.
Right?
So you've talked about this for a number of meetings, and I'm not real smart in picturing where in my head.
Yes.
What would be the opportunity to go out there and actually look at it on the ground and walk and see it?
You know, Jerry's going to lead a tour of the implementing committee, which is made up of the co-permittees, you know, kind of the staff people. So I
He
think,
was just getting ready to invite us.
yeah, I think so.
It'll be
Yeah.
April 5th. It'll be in the afternoon on April 5th. And if any of you want to come along, just get in touch with me, and I'll make sure that you get on the distribution list. We're all going to meet in the parking lot. We'll walk up to the pond, and then we'll walk there a little further up to the wetland area. Beautiful time of year to be out there. It should be green, but it's green now, and I don't want to doesn't look like we're getting much more rain, so we'll have to see.
April 5th and contact you?
April 5th, contact me, yeah.
Can
Yeah.
you just put me on the list now?
Yeah, I'll do that.
And I'm not sure when Rancho San Vicente will open, so that's the portion of Clara. I know the parking lot's done, I think, and
It looks done.
they did some commemorations of trails, so it's got to be close to being opened up soon, but you'll get a guided tour in April.
Good, thanks.
And Jerry, if you could also send me a note about that, because I might have some folks who are interested.
Yeah, we can send it to all of you.
I'll include the
Yeah.
whole pack.
Thank you.
No,
Go ahead.
Yeah, unfortunately, I got a board meeting that morning, so I'm not going to be able to join you. It's unfortunate anyway. So you mentioned the maintenance contractor over and over again. Who is the maintenance contractor?
It's, so for the first 5 years of the project, it's the firm that did the construction. But then after that, it's, from what I understand, it'll be county parks. Yeah. But maintenance is always, you know, as we acquire these properties, it's, like we were talking today, Jerry and I were talking, if we had been successful in acquiring Rancho El Toro, it would have changed, it would have been a paradigm shift for us. You know, we go from a landowner of 55 acres and have a conservation easement on 1,800 acres to a landowner of 12,600 acres, and with conservation easements, you know, hopefully soon on Calero and one on Coyote Ridge, and all of a sudden it changes the dynamic of what we are and who we are, and how we manage these properties is going to be a challenge. We, you know, if we acquired Rancho El Toro, we were going to work with the ranch manager and keep him on. I was very impressed how the Mathises and Justin Andres, I think his name is, managed that site. So we probably, you know, why, if something's not broke, why mess with it? But beyond that, you know, how we manage these properties is going to be a real challenge. So this is something we should probably discuss. I mean, with your experience, Craig's experience, Kyle's experience, Jan's experience, you know, in your various capacities of land management activities, and Richard from the private sector, and Jess with the farm community too, like Kyle. So I think if we end up acquiring some of these properties in the next year, which I hope we do, I never was a land manager, so I'm going to be learning on the fly. So.
That sounds like a challenge we'd like to get moving on.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you. Any questions, comments?
Speaker card.
Speaker card. Doug? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I just had a couple questions. So does our management plan cover the possibility of finding bullfrogs later on in the?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Bullfrog eradication will be an ongoing challenge, given its proximity to the reservoir.
So do we
Yeah.
have ways of doing that involve not dewatering the whole project, but?
Well, it's something I brought up to Tara, because Tara's the project manager on this, because I don't want to be translocating, well, it's not really translocating, but relocating CTS every year. I don't think that's a good idea. I mean, the turtles, you just move them a little bit away and then they move back in, but like Jerry said, it was a second breeding cycle, which I didn't know they did that, so just shows how much I know, how I, these species, you read something and it's okay, this is a paradigm shift for me on how CTS go through 2 breeding cycles if there's enough water and the temperature conditions are right and everything. So no, I don't want to do that every year, because I think it's a little too much to be doing that. And so, yeah, and that's something I talked to Tara about. And there are ways to try to keep bullfrogs out, creating like fence barriers to them being able to migrate to your site. I don't know how effective this stuff is, but, and you can hire snipers, to, shoot them.
I always thought there should be Boy Scout merit badges.
Yeah.
Associated with it.
My daughter's a brownie, and I know she would, she might be a little too squeamish, but I think earning a merit badge for bullfrog removal, I think she'd be up for it.
Wouldn't be too squeamish. He would relish the opportunity. You can also seine for the eggs for bullfrogs sit on the top, and for red-legged frog they sit below. So if you have someone who knows and can identify the eggs, they can pull off layers of them. And that's a pretty effective method, because the egg success rate's pretty low to begin with. So if you can pull off thousands of eggs off the top, you reduce their survival rate pretty low. But that's qualified professionals. So when we get tired of draining, we may have to start draining or seining.
I think seining is definitely the way to go. But initially there's this kind of assault SWAT team approach to trying to get rid of them.
Something that's covered in our plan.
Yeah, there were, I think, over 1,000 crawfish that were eliminated, taken out of the pond. Yeah. So.
The other question I had was, and I remember hearing about this before, but maybe you can just remind me. I mean, for contracts like this, for like these monitoring services from Major Harvey, do we have like a list of contractors that we just go to, like Harvey?
Yes. Yeah, we have
kind of pre-approved and.
Yes.
Could you just kind of explain that process a little bit?
Yes. So we went through a vetting process where we released an RFQ, they call it, and so we have one for appraisers, one for species monitoring, and another for restoration design and design build. And those RFQs went out, I think, in 2015, and we established the list back then. Every 3 to 5 years, you kind of go through that process again. So, and we have added a couple firms to it, as we added one firm to the restoration design list, and we added an appraiser to the appraisal list.
In each of those categories?
Yeah. And, but yeah, so we won't always go with those lists. Sometimes if a project is complicated enough, we would do an RFP, and then everybody could bid on it. But we will do this again, and so it was late 2015 that we established the list. So I'm thinking, probably in 2019 we'll refresh it.
So for those 3 categories?
Yes.
Do we have multiple then consultants or contractors in each category?
Yes.
So there's still like the possibility of like, some kind of competition or?
Yes. Yeah. So for the design build for San Felipe, we didn't choose a contractor for that. We submitted it to the firms. I think there's 8 of them that are on our on-call list for restoration. And only, I think, two bid. One we had to throw out because their bid came in late. So ultimately, 3 of the 8 firms decided to bid on the San Felipe. With this Clara project, we didn't have a list yet, so we did a traditional RFP, and Harvey and Seebeck were the ones that won the competition. So it was more of an RFP process when we hired Harvey, and it was only for design. And then we did another bid for construction because we didn't have the design-build rules yet. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And I have a quick question. Do we have through the committees and boards associated with the Habitat Agency, do we have a communication built with the local universities and community colleges that have environmental studies or environmental science programs?
It's more informal, but Tara and I attended an event put on at Santa Clara University to try to connect land managers with researchers, and actually we were talking about next steps with that. So we're inviting a lot of the people we've met to the Phytophthora forum we're going to have in February. And you're going to be invited to that too. And we also sent out a letter to a lot of professors at Berkeley, Santa Cruz, Stanford, San Jose State, to ask them if they wanted to collaborate with us on research projects. So we have some good established forums, like with Burrowing Owls, and with connectivity. We're working with a lot of scientists, and our partners like Post and OSA are working with us too on the connectivity issue. So there's 2 formal processes that I think are really good, and through the local assistance grants we've gotten through the Department of Fish and Wildlife, State Department of Fish and Wildlife, we've been working with people on Phytophthora, some of the leading experts on that, and with H.T. Harvey and SFEI on sycamore regeneration, and trying to understand the hybridization issue and how you can try to restore native sycamores. Kind of the same issue with Phytophthora, but it's not a pathogen, but it's a hybridization issue that's a threat to native California sycamores, but nothing formal. It's where I'm still trying to grapple with how to do that, and find the time to do it, and that's one thing that Tara and I talked about today about next steps, and a lot of it is hit or miss, and trying to line up a graduate student or professor to work on a research need that you have, and trying to find the right fit.
Okay.
Yeah.
It just seems like all the challenges that we face would be excellent opportunities for a grad student or even a undergrad to get community service hours or to do a special project or even
Agreed.
Yeah.
I agree.
I would have
Definitely.
jumped at the opportunity, to do bullfrog eradication or anything that had any real world worth. That translates on your resume pretty well. So,
Thank you.
if I have connections at San Jose State, I was a fresh graduate from there, from the environmental studies department, and would be glad to go back if.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. And there may be some opportunities for internships too.
Awesome. Right.
And then in the same vein, De Anza College has been down here with students and professors in Gavilan. Now that we have the Coyote campus open, that it's going to be a couple of years before, we're going to have a bond issue probably on the November ballot, and then that may well lead to wet labs, including ecology and such, here in Coyote Valley. So it would be an absolute natural. But I know De Anza has long been had students and professors, and if that professor is still around, that definitely would be someone to eradicate the bullfrogs.
Yeah,
Heather.
yes, and Deanza's involved with the connectivity working group.
Okay.
Some of the professors that were involved in that original study that kind of kicked off a lot of this stuff. And Ryan Phillips, who was a Deanza instructor and now is a grad student at San Jose State, he's been doing tricolor blackbird surveys for us. But I'd be game for whoever. Of course, they need to be qualified, but yeah,
Absolutely,
I don't
right.
have. I mean, I do have some time to train them to some degree, but part of it is, hey, it's got to be a two-way street. But I think, yeah, I would be open to whatever. And actually, they could do some stuff like basic research if they're learning. Like in grad school, I remember I was in a wetland ecology class, and I monitored a wetland in a park in Wisconsin, and just observed it for a whole semester and took water measurements and everything, using piezometers and everything. So, I think that would be useful to students. So, that's more of a formal, like, classroom experience, but then there's more, okay, research, and, we have some questions, they have some questions, and how's it work well for both organizations or both institutions, yeah.
Good, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Doug, you had
Thank you. Two detours from the question I actually want to ask. First, following up on Mr. Lovelace's comments, one of the LAFCO commissioners also teaches at San Jose State, and he occasionally brings his class there. The last time it was a really disgusting discussion, and no one was happy to be there. But, and Professor Cushing, also of San Jose State, occasionally brings some of her students to Water District Board meetings. So I was thinking that perhaps you might set up one of these committee meetings one night to be more of an outreach to students, if you want to do that, because I think it's great to get them involved and learn a little more about, what we're doing to try and make the world a better place.
Yeah, if you want to, could you pass that information to
Sure.
Cushing, you said, Professor?
It's Professor Cushing, and I've
Okay.
forgotten Terry's last name. Trumbull, thank you.
Okay.
But yeah, I'll send you
Thank you.
email if you'd like.
Thank you.
The second tangent is, I'm not sure which group of people you're talking about when you mentioned the April 5 implementation people. Is this the implementation board that meets
Oh,
with the
no.
governing board?
No, this is the implementation committee.
Okay.
It's they assist, well, see, the co-permittees ultimately implement the project application process. So they issue the permits. We don't, except for a participating special entity.
So you're not going to have to be covered by the Brown Act, and I can't,
No.
public notice, and I
No.
can't invite myself.
You can come.
Okay, that's even better answer.
Yeah. Yeah, I will make sure Jerry gets you an invite, because I got your email. But yeah, no, I don't mind you going.
Okay.
So, yeah. I mean, we're
Thanks.
inviting these guys, might as well invite you, so.
Yeah, right.
Planners, engineers.
You won't be lowering your standards too much by having me tag along.
Yeah,
But the
and
question
if
I
Jerry's there, the standards can't get any lower.
The question I really wanted to ask, though, since you mentioned creating facilities for grazing, I know that OSA has both a grazing management policy and then individual agreements with the people that they, allocate to various of their preserves. It's been a while since County Parks has talked about that, but I'm pretty sure that they have a policy and they also have agreements. And so my question really is, how do your needs fit in with their needs, given that they have policies, and then
Yeah.
here you come to do other stuff? So if it's possible to answer that
Yeah,
question.
I think I can.
Thank you.
I don't know their policies related to grazing that well, but I'll tell you the logic here. So in the planning process for this project, County Parks identified, so we're doing it on County Parks land that ultimately will be enrolled in the reserve system, but it's not enrolled yet. And and during the planning design process, we originally thought, well, we'll, protect this pond, fence off portions of it, yada, yada. And then during that iterative process, County Park said, well, the grazer needs over 800 gallons of water per day during the dry season, and this is their primary source for that. So to accomplish two objectives, which was to get the cows not going completely into the pond, because the areas where the red-legged frog are, or could be, they're not there yet, and where the Mount Hamilton thistle grows along the channel, it was best to have more control of grazing. But the grazer needs the water, so we created the infrastructure to still meet the needs of the grazer. And the grazing is needed for fuels management and keeping the non-native grasses down in the serpentine, just like at Coyote Ridge. So it was trying to reach a win-win here. That we didn't, going into the project, I didn't know we'd need to put in grazing infrastructure, but it became evident that we did, to sort of balance the needs of the grazer with protecting the resource.
That's helpful.
You're welcome. Yep.
Other questions, comments? Okay, then we'll move on to the next item, which is selection of 2018 Public Advisory Committee Board Chair and Vice Chair. Just as part of a review, the chair's job is to conduct the meetings. Also, the person is expected to attend the governing and implementation board meetings. They're often the same time, same place, not always. And the chair, I think Joseph has filled in once for me, or not, or something. No, okay. And Julie is now. Oh, Julie filled in once for me.
Don't continue to traumatize.
Yeah. And because the implementation board and the governing board meet here, and they meet at 3:00 in the afternoon. And if anyone would like to step up, I'm more than willing to step aside. But and if so, sing out.
I was just curious, Joseph, were you interested in stepping into the chair's seat since you were vice chair?
No, I couldn't do it. I don't
Okay.
have the time commitment for the...
All right. Well, unless somebody else wants to step up, Craig, you got a lot more time now, don't you?
You're out of the conservancy.
Okay. All right. Well, if nobody else wants it, then I'm prepared to nominate Walt again. You do a great job, Walt.
Thank you. And so if we could,
Are we taking these one at a time?
I was going to do them both together.
Yeah, I think it's one, it's a motion on one, right? And then, or is it motion?
Same time.
Same time? Okay.
Okay. So if you'd like to amend the motion, or?
Yeah, I will. Yes, I'll make a friendly amendment to my own motion. Joseph, if you're prepared to still sit in as vice chair, then I'd like to continue, just nominate you as the vice chair as well.
do it.
All right.
Yeah, and it's glad that you're going to be back with us,
Right.
rather than going away. Okay, so we have Walt Kleins and Joseph Lovelace as the chair and vice chair. And do we have a second on that motion?
I second it.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any nays or abstentions? None? So we're here for another year.
Great. I like it.
And then, Ed, you get to, and thank
Yes.
you again for giving us the written notes. I'd like to read it.
It's okay. You can thank Rose Herrera.
Okay.
She I always had these as a guide for me, and she said, I need those. And I said, okay. So,
Thank you.
so just going to give you a little bit of update first on where we are with the regional general permit and the 401 certification update, as well as the integration of Section 7 consultation through NOAA Fisheries with the RGP. So the HCP NCCP is basically an in lieu fee program. We collect money, and over time we buy property, or we restore it, or create habitat and manage it. And we don't have to do advanced mitigation, except for the plants. If we impact a plant occurrence, where we take a plant occurrence, we have to have plant occurrences already protected. So, but everything else is kind of like an in lieu fee program. Well, currently with our RGP, we have a interim instrument, mitigation instrument, which until the in lieu fee program gets created, allows applicants to use the regional general permit, but we have to have credit already established for take of waters of the U.S., or I should say it's take isn't the right term, but sort of impacts to waters of the U.S. So that's why we're fast-tracking San Felipe Creek restoration. That's why we did the Clara one. That's why we're doing the Coyote Ponds. Pacheco doesn't really have a good nexus with the 404 permitting, because we're doing some upland restoration. So we're in the process of developing an in lieu fee program, so we won't be on a hamster wheel, always trying to stay ahead of take. And so currently we're drafting the agreement and the program framework for that. So there were public comments. We responded to public comments. The public comments came from Save the Bay and from the regional, only the San Francisco Regional Water Quality Board, saying they have concerns about this in sort of the general way they usually do about it's something that they said they couldn't support, but we are negotiating with them to create something that they can support. So, and that's sort of the second or the third bullet. So we responded to the comments, and we just got direction from the Corps. The Corps is the lead of the interagency review team, which the regional board and NOAA and the Fish and Wildlife Service and the Department of Fish and Wildlife are all part of that. And they have to approve the in lieu fee program. So that's, hopefully we'll have an in lieu fee program by the end of the year, maybe early next year, approved by the IRT. And then we can, I mean, they'll have stay ahead provisions and jump start and stuff like that. Not unlike the wildlife agencies do. So we're kind of on the way to establishing that, and that'll make life easier for us. And it'll make life easier for applicants, because there won't be any delays if we don't have credits already established. And it'll save applicants money, because if the RGP was going to be used for a project where we didn't have advanced mitigation credit, there's something called temporal loss. So the time between the impact and when you mitigate it, there would be an additional fee that would have to be charged, because it's not in the spirit of no net loss of waters of the U.S. So many of you were around when this plan was being developed, and fish was originally considered to be covered, but the two sides never did meet. So we've been having these discussions with NOAA Fisheries. Well, it's not like what NOAA Fisheries does results in great delays to projects. I mean, sometimes when there's disagreements over a project, NOAA can come in and create problems for an applicant. but typically that doesn't happen. Unless, you know, the water district has a lot of challenges with NOAA, but your typical project applicant doesn't. But there are public works projects, mainly bridges and pipelines that the water district does, which have minimal impacts or not substantial impacts to fisheries, but they are likely to adversely affect steelhead. So there is a consultation that goes on with NOAA, and so even though they're covered by our RGP, but they're impacting a steelhead fisheries, it could result in a project being delayed an additional 3 to 9 months. So by integrating the Section 7 consultation process in with our regional general permit, where the Habitat Agency will agree to do steelhead-specific restoration in return for, you know, a 30 to 45-day consultation process, we're hoping to eliminate that delay for a project proponent. And again, it's mainly public works projects, whether water district or a city or the county. So the city of San Jose, for instance, is going to replace all the outfall structures in the city over the next 10, 15 years, and that's like 300 to 400, maybe, I'm probably underestimating it, going to be replaced. All the bridges in the county will be replaced in the next 50 years, or the vast majority of them. And the water district does a lot of stuff that is within the purview of a covered activity and meets the thresholds of a regional general permit. So now those projects, if they are likely to adversely affect fish, they'll have to pay an additional fee for impacts to fish, which then we'll use that money to restore steelhead habitat or build a fish passage project where we're improving passage, but there'll be no more delays associated with consultations with NOAA. And we weren't sure NOAA was going to agree to this, but they have agreed to work with us on this. So it was very encouraging. This agreement with NOAA came about since the last time we met with you. So we had a really good meeting with the San Francisco Regional Board about integrating the 401 process into our plan. I don't think we're going to get a 401 certification. We're probably going to get something very similar. They call it a DWR, discharge waste requirement. And if a project is deemed complete, you'll be able to get your certification from the regional board within 30 days. So it's following sort of the same logic of the regional general permit. So, and they're willing to tier off of our existing fee structure. There'll be some additional conditions put on projects because the regional board has different requirements than the Habitat Plan does or the Corps does. And that's why the regional board isn't going to sign on to our in-lieu fee program, because they want to make sure that their requirements are dealt with in a way that satisfies the regional board's needs as well as Porter Cologne. So, but I think there's a pathway to integrating, and we have two regional boards, this Central Coast and the San Francisco Bay. Morgan Hill is kind of like the dividing line of the two regional boards. So we're meeting with both of them, and I'm cautiously optimistic. Actually, I'm very optimistic that we're going to get some sort of process through the regional boards where their permitting will be somewhat integrated with ours, and they've agreed to a streamlined approval process, which is good news for applicants, because I hear complaints from consultants mainly. I usually don't have project proponents, or I do hear it from the county public works people. We're paying your fees, and yet we still have to pay regional board, and there's, it takes another 9 to 10, 12 months to get our permit. So, I mean, the regional board staff are just doing their job, but it is something that I think when this plan was envisioned way back when, that hopefully there would be some sort of permit integration, and we're slowly kind of getting there. So we also got a letter from the Fish and Wildlife, or the Department of Fish and Wildlife, that through the 1600 permit, they wouldn't add additional conditions to a project if those conditions are associated with impacts to species that we're covering. So we found out that projects were, additional requirements were being placed on projects that should have been covered by the NCCP, and they've agreed to stop doing that. But if something is beyond what we do, there still could be some conditions added onto a 1600 permit, but no longer will an applicant have to do things twice. You pay your habitat fees and you get your 1600 permit, and you're doing things twice for red-legged frogs or twice for riparian restoration. So that's going to go away. So we're kind of getting there. The 1600 is never going to be integrated. I shouldn't say never, but it's unlikely it'll be integrated. I think that's always going to be one thing that's never going to, but at least we're getting to a point where they won't be adding, if a project's coming in, we won't make you do things twice. So on to any questions with that?
Just a real brief question. I was just curious, what was Save the Bay's concerns?
They didn't, they thought that we would be filling in tidal wetlands.
Oh, okay.
And yeah.
You're like, no,
Yeah.
that's enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
And Jerry was more involved with that. Was there anything else that they were concerned with?
No, that was primary. They didn't quite understand the scope, didn't go, I don't think they read through the project list, the potential project list too carefully, but they were concerned there could be big projects, and like Ed said, in the Bay areas, and so it was a moot point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was sort of a knee-jerk reaction, oh my goodness, an RGP, and it's going to circumvent the regulatory process. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a question on
Yes.
that too. So, I don't remember all the details, but during the stakeholder group meetings, this fish thing was just, I don't know, just kind of blew up, and can't remember exactly what the issues were. But we're not changing our covered species list.
No.
Steelhead won't be on the list.
No.
We're just making kind of a side agreement, and this, I think
Exactly.
it works because these are small projects and not
Yes.
water district projects,
Correct.
to just cover their concerns.
Exactly. It'll cover potentially some small water district projects, but not those big ones, which is, I think, where a lot of the disagreement comes. I know, I mean, I've heard it from both sides. I've heard it from NOAA and I've heard it from the water district, and I think there's a lot of misunderstanding between the two, and it's, but yeah, it's not covered, and they won't be added. Now, if we amend the plan for a variety of reasons, we could explore adding them as a covered species then, and maybe there'll be a path forward at that point.
Yeah, we
Right
may
now,
have a
this
track
isn't
record.
even a plan amendment, this is just
No,
a
no,
agreement.
yeah, it's just, it's through the regional general permit, yeah, so it's a lot easier than a plan amendment, which is a big undertaking. Yeah. But we're probably gonna have to do that, and that's something we can talk to you about in the future. There's some issues, there's some challenges with how the plan's written, and we need to amend some things, and there's additional projects that might be added, like the SMP program might be added. Mountain View is considered maybe joining as a co-permittee. I don't think they will, but it's something that has been, I've met with them about that. But if those things happen, along with some of the things that we've identified as needing amending, then you know, it's a 2 to 5 year process to do that. Yeah.
That's when we can use the interns that you were talking about, Joseph.
So on the acquisition front, Clara Park enrollment, it's just working through the template easement language with the county has proven to be a little more challenging than I thought it would be. But I'm hoping we can work through that and get that land enrolled in our reserve system, because there's some, we've made investments on that property by doing a lot of survey work. I should have mentioned this. There was 1,000 yellow-legged frogs found by our consultant, and this was a consultant chosen by the on-call list. Nomad. They went out there and did plant surveys, amphibian surveys, and did an assessment of the creeks. And this trib of upper Yagas had 400 yellow-legged, they had one population of 200 yellow-legged frog and another of 800 in this upper watershed part of Yagas, which is fantastic. And they found CTS in 2 of the ponds, not the one that I talked to you about today, because we excluded that one. And a lot of plant occurrences too, including plants not covered by the plan that we didn't know were out there. Some rare plants that are on the California Native Plant Society lists of rare plants. So that's probably something I should remind me to talk about that at the May meeting. I'll talk about those studies. Pardon me?
Yellow-legged frog.
Yellow-legged, yeah, which is a candidate species for listing right now. Yeah,
Not on our covered.
it is.
Oh, it is.
Yes. Yeah, so there was good hindsight anticipating listing. So the species, some species are on the list were during the permit term, the 50 years, they thought this might be listed. So applicants are covered for that. Thank goodness. So Calero's an important property for plant occurrences, yellow-legged frog occurrences. We've made a lot of investments in it, and I'm hoping we can work through this with county parks and get that site enrolled soon. Shingle Valley, that's the rest of the UTC property. I can't get into details with you about the negotiations, but they're going very well. I can tell you that. No, it'll end up not being the entire property, which will make the joint boards happy because they were concerned about liability, and it's going to be areas of the property which for the most part were never used in the rocket fuel or rocket engine production. So there's about 27 acres somewhere. Yeah, 30 acres. Yeah, it's a small amount that still remains and they want to go the donation agreement route like they did on the front half. And I think there is about 25 to 30 acres of serpentine that would be part of the sale. The regional wastewater facility is an important spot for owls, and we're hoping.
As A1.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's going to be, a portion of it's going to be enrolled in our reserve system, hopefully this year, with the balance being enrolled over time. I tried to get the facility to enroll the whole thing now, but we haven't been successful with that, but we are getting them to understand that if we're going to enroll part of the property as mitigation in lieu of fees that they would pay for their facility projects, that we need a commitment from them that the whole 201 acres would be enrolled, because 72 acres is not a reserve system. You really need 200 minimum, in my opinion.
Say enrolled, is that a permanent situation?
Yes, permanent. So we would put a conservation easement over it.
Okay.
Yeah,
good.
yes.
Go on here.
Right now, we're just doing management activities out there. I mean, we'll still do those, but now we'll have a legal, it's designated open space by the city of San Jose, but we all know that can change. Yeah. So I've made that clear that that's not enough of a protection on the property, and they need to make a commitment to enroll the whole thing if they want to not pay fees for impacts to owls and other things.
Good to hear.
Why are they reticent?
I don't know. I think it's kind of a new thing for them, and they probably think I'm being greedy, that I want the whole thing, and I am being greedy. But for conservation biology reasons and reserve system integrity, we kind of need the whole thing. I'm still worried about the owls not surviving out there, given all the development that's going to go on ultimately around that. But 72 acres isn't worth anything, and it's kind of a headache to manage. But at least if you got 201 acres, when the placer plan was put together, 200 acres was, well, it hasn't been approved yet, but it's 200 acres was deemed the minimum size for a reserve system parcel. And this is unique because of the owls. I mean, we wouldn't be interested in it if the owls weren't there. But, and that's how the placer plan was sort of set up. If there was something unique, it could be smaller than several thousand acre. So adjacency is critical also. So, I mean, you can add small pieces to a larger piece, and that makes sense. But, just buying these little isolated fragments is challenging, both for management and for conservation biology reasons. So we'll see. Yeah. We're also involved in other projects that I can't get into with you here because it's, I've mentioned some of the stuff in closed sessions to the boards, but they're too early in the process for me to come out and say, hey, we're doing X, Y, Z. So I just want to go over some good news with the mid-year budget overview. So we projected revenues would be 5.5 million for this year. Right now they're at 7.6. So we're finally getting that big bump that we kept projecting and predicting we would. And expenses are lower than we projected, but that's mainly because the construction of San Felipe Creek has been delayed until the spring. We had expected it would start in September. The main reason for that was the permitting agencies didn't have time to issue permits for the project because we still need to get permits from the regional board and the state 1600 permit. They were so overwhelmed with all the emergency projects because of the flooding and all the infrastructure that was damaged because of the heavy rains. And we also made some tweaks to design. So between those two things, we didn't want to rush the project forward just to start building in September and not probably be able to finish it because we originally had hoped we'd get started in August. We'd be pushing up against that October 15th deadline. So we just decided to delay things. So the expense line will end up being higher. So it's a good number. It's always better to make more than spend, but that's the reason why that's low. And on the next page, you can see that our reserves in this, so we have 3 accounts. We have a checking account. We have a savings account associated with Caltrans projects. So some of the work we're doing out of Pacheco Creek comes out of that pot because Caltrans gave us money as mitigation for projects that happened in the plan area. They had BOs already. So the things we do with this money won't count towards our metrics, our credits for the habitat plan. So acres we acquire with this money won't count towards our acres. The money we spend on the oaks won't count. So the oak restoration isn't going to count for us. It counts for Caltrans. And so that's why that's set aside distinctly and unique in our budget. And then we have the reserve account is rainy day fund, and we're going to add more to that. And then we have money that's invested in the local agency investment fund, which all governments do. You get a better interest rate. And you can see, and then there was the interest, the fourth quarter interest is there. And you can see at the end of the year, we had just under 11.7 million in our various accounts. And second quarter, these The money from Morgan Hill hasn't come in yet, but it's supposed to come in next week. But the money from the city of San Jose, and there was money from the county that came in, that has come in, and this is second quarter fee revenues. You can see now we have $17.8 million in our various accounts.
Can I ask you a
And
question on that?
yes,
So, are you talking the LAIF? Is that one eventually going to go into the community foundation?
a portion of that will, the endowment portion, which is probably over 2 million at this point.
The endowment's at about 2 million now.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yep. And you can see the expenses on what we've done to date, what we budgeted for, and how much is remaining at the bottom of page 2. So I wanted to give you an advocacy update, and then I wanted to give you an update on the Bay Area Open Space January gathering that I attended last week. And that's where I'm going to talk about the board, Walt, the committee.
Thank you.
So through our advocacy work, we don't do this by ourselves. The California Coalition, so other entities like us who have HCPs and CCPs come together and we lobby, advocate for things to be, cap and trade money to be set aside for fee title acquisitions, money in the park water bond. 53 million has been earmarked for NCCPs, and part of what we do is meet with the writers of the legislation. We meet with the governor's office. We meet with DFW, Department of Fish and Wildlife, and we also meet with legislators. So I met with Stone and Watkowski, and I called Clara and Evan Lowe and get Senator Monning and get them to support keeping that in there, because for a while it looked like we're going to lose it. It looks like the 53 million was going to go to the Salton Sea or the LA River, and there's a lot of power in Southern California. So we worked hard to make sure that stayed in the park bond, and we worked hard to secure cap and trade money. Would be right now the cap and trade money through the SOC program you can only do conservation easements, and we said, well, a lot of times the landowner doesn't want to do a conservation easement. They want to do a fee title. A perfect example of that is the Rancho El Toro. They didn't want to do a conservation. They want to sell their land and buy land somewhere else. So that gives a little more flexibility. We also pushed hard, and we weren't the only ones doing this. There was environmental groups and conservation groups across the state that were pushing for more funding for the Department of Fish and Wildlife. And $15 million in the governor's budget additional dollars have been earmarked for the Department of Fish and Wildlife for a lot of things. But specifically for us, 8 new positions will be developed for the new conservation agreements and the strategies and implementation to expand existing voluntary CISA programs, including NCCPs, as well as RCISs. So we're putting together a letter on how we'd like those 8 positions kind of divvied up across the state. So on the federal side,
Can I ask one
yes.
more? What is your exact role in that coalition?
My role, so we're a member of the California Conservation Coalition, which is John Hopkins.
Are you like an officer in it? Or
No,
are you,
no,
you're
I'm just a member. Yeah.
You're just a member. Okay,
Yeah,
that's all I need.
And they asked me to, so they help tell me what to do. And then they say, Senator Monning's important, Senator Watkowski's important, Senator Bell's important, Assembly Member Stone is important for different things. and then I contact those people, or I contact their staff usually, but sometimes I talk to them directly.
And are you the only one that's doing that?
No,
or-
no.
So
So
all the
Southern
members
California
do that?
plans are doing it. The Placer Plan does it. The Central Valley plans more broadly. Our neighbor to the north, East Contra Costa, does it. So we're not the only ones doing it. And then sometimes we get partner organizations like Committee to Save Green Foothills, the Nature Conservancy. They also partner with us to push for certain legislation. And so at the federal level, we're working with, so we have this, we've created, and this isn't, again, me, I'm just part of it. I am the chair of the fundraising committee for this, the National HCP Coalition. So we had a conference in November, and people from all over, HCPs from all over the country, a lot of red states included, attended this event. And so we now have people from Florida, and we have private wind energy HCPs. We have Texas. There's some big HCPs in Texas that are very like ours. They're they're countywide or Edwards Aquifer. So we work with them to try to promote permit integration, permit streamlining. We work to secure Section 6 funding, and through the efforts of this larger group, as well as our friends in Riverside County, and it's truly bipartisan because we get support from. I met Congressman Carter from Texas, Congressman Calbert from West Riverside County HCP. He represents that area. And these are Republicans who see the value in HCPs. So the administration's budget was $19 million and they zeroed out all funding for land acquisitions. The Section 6 money that helped buy Coyote Ridge, the Section 6 money that we'll use to hopefully buy a property that I can't talk about, or UTC, one of those, or both perhaps, because we haven't heard on our most recent grant application. We have not been told whether we've gotten it or not. Hopefully we did. So through the efforts of this coalition, and Congressman Carter's is in Williamson County, Texas, and Calbert, as of, he's no longer the chair of the Appropriations Committee, but he was last year, and they increased it back up to the 53 million that was, so keeping a status quo in that program. And it's a fight just to keep status quo, and that's the message we've gotten from agency people, both of the Department of Interior and specifically the Department of Fish and Wildlife, I should say the Fish and Wildlife Service, that you sometimes you get frustrated that the money's not going up, but the fact that you guys are doing what you're doing is the reason why it hasn't gone down. And it truly is bipartisan. Yes.
Give me a feel, I guess, more
Yeah.
than anything else. Assume you were successful in all those state and the federal, that's $100 million. How do we, this
Yes.
ACP, get a share of that? Is by grant requests?
Yes.
So everybody
Yes.
could, so we might not get any of it, or we might get some of it.
Correct. Correct. So for Coyote Ridge, 4.7 million was directly because of money for NCCPs and the Section 6 program. And then there was another $1 million from the Bureau of Rec that was kind of tiered off of these two programs. So that gives you an idea. And so if the funding disappears, the match funding might disappear too. So if the Section 6 money disappeared, maybe the NCCP money wouldn't go away. I don't know. Yeah, but yeah, it is sort of yeah. I always hope we get the money, of course. And I also, and one other thing we've been pushing for is to increase so in the old days, you could apply for 6 million, and actually Riverside got 12 million on a grant, Section 6 grant. So they're upping it back up to 6 million. Or maybe 10, I can't remember what it was. But so it's no longer going to be the 2 million cap. That means it's going to be more competitive, but we have a chance to really cash in. Our friends in East Contra Costa, they got a couple 6 million grants when it was a higher amount you could apply for. Land costs, not just here across the country, are going up. I mean, here is just insane, but it's across the country. There's been an increase in valuation. So these things that we've been advocating for will help. So with the Bay Area Open Space Gathering, I just, some key takeaways, and I know it's taken us a long time to get to the board thing and the committee and replacing Danielle, who unfortunately was stretched too thin. Yeah.
She had too many balls in the air.
Exactly. So this event was focused on the park and water bond and political advocacy, and then they also started talking about diversity of your boards. So the takeaway I got was the changing focus of park and water bonds reflects the changing demographics of California. So the sponsors of this park and water bond, SB5, it now has a proposition number. It's being called Proposition 68. And as you know by what I told you up above, it's really important for us that this passes and it's on the June ballot. So in the way this former state senator, his name was Fred, I forgot his last name, was explaining it, the way park and water bonds used to be was that they were supported by urban voters, but the projects were primarily in rural areas. So big water projects in rural areas, big land acquisitions in rural areas to protect, the Santa Monica Mountains or, Mount Hamilton Range or whatever, the Sierras. But so with the changing demographics in California, the sponsors of this bill were Garcia and De Leon. So Garcia from the Assembly, De Leon from the Senate. And it reflects sort of, California is changing. I mean, our own area here is a third Latino, a third Anglo, and a third Asian. So that's the San Jose metropolitan area. And there's more of an expectation that these bond acts also deal with disadvantaged communities, park-deprived communities, which comes up in your committee a lot, where our urban parks, and there's communities that don't have a lot of parks. So the changing demographics means these bills are more, it's still these rural-focused things, but we also need water for disadvantaged communities, clean water. We hear about these communities in the Central Valley where they don't have clean water, and also green parks and river and parkways and stuff for urban communities, and the park bonds have evolved into this sort of, I'd say, a better mix of how the money should be spent. But getting support is also getting communities of color to support these things. And Andrea McKenzie will tell you, Mark Landgraf spoke at this event, was that a key constituents for their Measure Q was the Vietnamese community, the Chinese community, and the Latino community who came out and voted for Measure Q, because a lot of that money is going to be spent in urban areas. So it's not just about me taking money and buying Rancho El Toro anymore, and I'm okay with that. I think that's a better way to go, personally. So, but that gets to, I can't do advocacy with the public on SB5, but I can tell you the passage of this is very important. It was emphasized at the gathering that this is our shot at getting money for water infrastructure and for parks. And a big portion of this is to deal with the maintenance backlog that the State Department of Parks has. So it's not just buying new stuff, it's also let's fix what we have and deal with what we have too. So I will say it's important for us how you want to relay that message in your own organizations, and how you want to relay it to your neighbors is up to you. But we pushed hard for money to be set aside for NCCP, so that's our selfish interest. It also opens up some of the cap and trade money for us. And it'll fund the river parkways and urban streams programs, which have been defunded for a few years now. And those are things we can also apply for and compete for. So that's my pitch, and that's about the only pitch I can do. I can't use this agency as a vehicle for influencing the public, but I'll leave it at that. So another big key takeaway at this event was the diversity of boards, and I think since we have an opening on our board now, I think we should think about, we're primarily Caucasian. We have one woman, so I think who we choose to replace Danielle should reflect the diversity of our community, and also it should reflect sort of the changing kind of, and it's also a good way to engage that community, because you're just saying how many people know what you do. Well, there's some kids who go to Hollister's and Gilroy schools that know what we do now, and they'll tell their parents hopefully, but they might not. I know how my daughter is, trying to pull teeth to get her to tell you something. So but when she does tell me, it's I learn a lot. So I think having that person could be a benefit for all of us here, and it could be a way to reach a segment of our community that doesn't know what we do. So who applies for it and who's the most qualified is, it's always a balancing act. But I do think we should try to figure out how we can get a little more diversity on the Public Advisory Committee.
Hey, can you remind me which board is empty right now? You said to replace.
There's
What am I
a seat.
missing?
There's a seat on the PAC that's open.
On this here.
Yes, I have no influence on who sits on the governing board.
We have 8 members now. Did you say we're supposed to have 9?
Yes,
Oh, I didn't know that.
and I have no influence on the governing board.
So-
That's just determined by the mayor and the county on how they assign committee. Yeah.
So what is the title? Like, I'm environmental and Jess is farming. So what is the title of that?
Business.
Business.
Business. And they, one of their messages at the end, this, I think it was Brian Doyle was his name. He's Rob Courtney's counterpart for East Bay Parks. He said, you just got to do it. And this former state senator said, you need to do this. You just got to take the bull by the horns and start doing it, because this is the new California. I know it scares some people, and it's a new world out there, but I don't want to run away from it.
So, in terms of trying to find a member, it has to be within the plan's area, correct?
Correct.
The member has to come.
Yeah, or they have a business within the plan. So if they lived in Hollister, but they own a business here, or they live in Oakland, they have a business here, that's okay.
Yeah. So have you done some outreach to some of the council members, especially I'm thinking Johnny Camus and, my goodness, his face is for Sergio Jimenez. Simply because I'm thinking I doubt somebody wants to come from North San Jose all the way down to Morgan
Yeah.
Hill for this.
Yeah.
But they're at least a little bit more at the southern end of San Jose.
Okay.
And maybe if you tapped them to tap their staff, some of these people are on the ground, or just the council
Yeah.
members themselves, and sort of give them essentially the criteria that we're looking for, a little bit more diversity, explain the board that we're looking for a little bit more diversity. And is there anybody maybe in their business community that they might want to recommend?
That's a great idea, because I know Sergio, and Silvio Reynos is on our board. So I could talk to the three of them as a place to start. Yeah. Yeah, and we don't have a lot of representation from San Jose either. Yeah.
So, were you saying Sergio Jimenez? Is that?
Sergio.
Right, because I'm in his district.
Okay.
And I know him not real well, but enough that I would be glad to call him as a representative of the board.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah.
I think that'd be more
Okay.
appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
The new you.
Yeah, I mean, she used to be a board member.
Right, I know Helen. I know Helen.
exactly.
I'll contact her.
Yes, I know. I mean, Sergio's a good, obviously, to start with Sergio, but he might just turn around and reach out to Helen and ask, so.
Edmonds, the thought that came to me is that we do a lot of business with consultants who do environmental work, soil work, all those things.
Yes.
Which are interested in the environment, and they have a lot of women in minorities in some of those companies.
Oh, it's
And one of
true.
those companies might have someone who would love to come up and
Yeah,
As long as it doesn't present a conflict.
right. I mean, that's a good point. I recently met with some Tri-Point Home staff people, and they were represented more diversity, the ones I met, so, yep. So, yeah, thank you. I'll talk to, so do you think it's appropriate that I mean, I'll let you talk to Sergio, but I know Sylvia well enough, I've talked to her a few times after the vote.
I don't see that it's, I mean,
Okay.
I don't know if anybody has a discomfort with it, but I don't see the problem as doing
Okay.
outreach. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
you're not going to make the decision on
No.
a candidate, that's my
No.
point. So
No.
the outreach from you, I don't see as being a problem.
They would nominate somebody.
Exactly, and they have to
we-
go through the process, and the board has to
Right, we make sure
accept
you all
them.
are comfortable with them, and then the board has to appoint them.
Exactly,
Yeah.
so I don't have a problem with the outreach.
Okay. The final page is just meeting updates. I don't want to get into this too much, but it gives you an idea of different processes and things that we've been involved with. I guess a key one here is I did meet with Assemblymember Stone, and there were my main concern with talking with him was that NCCPs are your gold standard. Don't neglect them. He understands that. He was very sophisticated on the issues. And I also was concerned about the 800-pound gorilla high-speed rail, and I talked to him about that, and he said, keep us abreast. Our landowner friends in Pacheco are all worried about high-speed rail. They're concerned about it, and there hasn't been good outreach to the landowners in that valley by high-speed rail.
No, but high-speed rail's finding itself back in the hot seat again.
Yes.
You know, with the Assembly and the Senate, and, yeah, the money, obviously, that they're having problems in terms of how much money they've been spending in the Central Valley for acquisition was way over what they thought they were going to, so. It could, who knows?
It's puzzling. I mean, I don't want our country to be like China, but they've built 16,000 miles of high-speed rail lines since this was thought about 23 years ago in this state. And there's very little of high-speed rail track anywhere in the entire United States. But yeah, I have mixed emotions about the high-speed rail thing, because I view them as, yes, I'm not comfortable with what I read in the paper. I'm glad the Senate and the Assembly are looking into it. I'm also not comfortable how they deal with landowners, or don't in this
Yeah,
case.
yeah. They haven't always been the best with their outreach, let's put it that way.
So the other key thing is, things move slowly with the airport, but I think we will be, they're being very receptive to our advice about managing owls out there, and I think we're going to get a management agreement sometime soon and work with the airport on managing the owls. I think I don't have a lot of hope for the Moffett or Shoreline populations, but if we can turn this one around between Warm Springs and the regional wastewater facility, maybe we can prevent this bird from going locally extinct. So,
Okay.
thank you.
And for looking ahead to the next meeting, does anyone have anything that they would like to be on the agenda?
Just one comment. I was going to talk to you privately, but I'll put it out just in case there's a member here. It was just part of your report. Sorry, I'm kind of like walking back for a second. Maybe it's just me, but next time, so you have your total revenues at 7.6.
Yep.
And it's sort of, nothing to me adds up because you have the total revenues on both pages.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'd appreciate it next time if there's a
Yes.
column that makes it clear where exactly the 7.6 is, because
Yes.
I'm a little
yeah.
confused.
So the 7, yes, let me explain a little bit now, but I will make those changes for sure. So the 7.6 is part of the 17 million.
Okay.
Yep. And
I understand it would
Yep.
be part of the 17 million.
Yep.
It's just hard to parse out.
yes, understood. I'll definitely do that. Thank you. Yep.
Edmonds, I would appreciate too, if you could give us at the next meeting, a list of the various projects and how much they paid for fees this last year or whatever, however you calculate it, so you don't have to make a separate spreadsheet. But just
Okay.
to give me a feel for which projects, state, local, private industry are paying for the
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, kind of like the breakdown. Yeah. Okay.
list of the projects and the amount
Yep.
of fees that, however you do it, so it's not new additional bookkeeping, but it's a sense of where the funds are really coming from.
Well, and I almost think that should be an annual report on, where the fees are coming from.
You may have that for the annual report anyway.
Yeah,
I'd
no,
like to
we,
see it.
yeah, we have that information. Usually we, we talk about it in a broad sense at the budget workshop, but we don't come up with a list of the projects and how many fees they pay. But we do break it down in terms of the communities that the projects were and whether they were public or private. Yep. I'll have to check with Valerie to make sure I'm not violating some sort of privacy thing, but I can definitely give you kind of the breakdown, and we can definitely do what you requested. Yeah.
Okay, then, hearing, so nothing else for the good of the group? Then let's adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Evans, appreciate it.